in the WNBA that happened like an hour or so ago, and the changing dynamics of what's taking place in college men's basketball. But first, we got to be talking about what everyone seems to be talking about, and that for some reasons everyone's talking about Memphis. If you guys didn't see over the weekend, LeBron was doing some type of interview, or as Stephen A. Smith said, hanging with the white boys, talking about the city of Memphis, and basically said how he didn't want to. The city of Memphis should lose their basketball team, and that the Memphis Grizzlies should be relocated to Nashville. And two things that caught me off guard with this. One was that apparently this has been like a pretty common thing amongst NBA fans. There's a big mashup, if you want to go find it, of a lot of NBA players talking about how they don't like playing in Memphis. Now, to me, that's a little bit misleading because, one, Draymond Green's one of those people, and Draymond Green is literally just a mouthpiece for whatever LeBron James wants to say. But the second thing is that it seems as if that most of the players are talking about the hotel that they stay at in Memphis versus actually playing in the city of Memphis. You get what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't necessarily seem that it has to be any issue with the actual town versus the amenities that Memphis is providing. LeBron's sentiment was basically like, I don't like playing there. The fact that it got to where it got to, with, I mean, like people like Keisha Cole was coming out and saying things about it. Now, one thing I think that happens, especially in the age of social media now, is the fact that once someone makes a joke or says something negative, particularly about a person, a city, or something you care about, it isn't anymore the sense to just say, hey, I kind of disagree with that sentiment, or hey, I think these are the places that you are wrong in. It then becomes essentially a tidal wave of takes to basically outtake the other people's takes. And it went into a place that I think, I can't speak for what LeBron was trying to go for and why he felt this way personally. I don't know if it's because LeBron James wants to own a team at some point. I mean, that's been kind of widely assumed for a while. I don't know if him saying this is because he wants to be part of the ownership group that moves the Memphis Grizzlies over to Nashville. I can't speak to that. But what I can say is that black people in Memphis did not like that. Not even black people in Memphis. Memphis people did not like that. And it very much came to a place of, I think, hurt that a lot of people saw LeBron say this. And I think it has been kind of a thing that's kind of gone unnoticed, is the fact that LeBron has pretty much stopped saying anything essentially controversial in a pretty long time that doesn't have to do with himself, right? The last time we really had any conversation about anything that LeBron has said was last year, but that had to do with something that Stephen A. Smith said when it came to Bronny, his son, and whether or not he needs to be drafted. That was way more of a personal kind of conversation. This was just a statement that everyone seemed to get pissed off at. And something that I think is very fascinating about anytime we talk about teams and the cities that they stay in and what they mean for the city. I've said this before, and I say it again. These teams, while they are businesses, they are much more intrinsic into the city than I think a lot of people think that they are, right? Memphis doesn't necessarily have a lot, as per se the people of Memphis will let you know, right? Like, it is not necessarily one of the great American cities that a lot of people tend to go to visit as far as tourism is concerned. But they definitely seem to love their sports, and they definitely love their basketball. And the Memphis Grizzlies have been pretty good, I would say, majority of the time they're being in Memphis. They had the Mike Conley, Zebo, Marc Gasol teams that got to the Western Conference Finals one year. Then you have now the Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., Desmond Bane, Dylan Brooks team that essentially is now all but gone. We'll see whether or not Ja is still on the team after this season. It seems like he won't be. They, in large part, have been a pretty stable NBA team, and I think is maybe not the model of a small market team. I think the model is obviously a team like San Antonio. San Antonio, I wouldn't argue is that small of a market, but a team that's able to be at least consistently good, to have the fans enjoy the team, and give themselves at least somewhat of a chance to get to the finals, right? Get to wherever they want to get to. And this isn't necessarily a team that I would argue has been very dysfunctional, for a while. They've obviously had bad years. They're bad this year, right? Obviously due to injuries and then trades that they made to kind of essentially be this way. But they are not some type of like happenstack team. And so the idea that they now need to move from Memphis to Nashville doesn't really seem to make much sense. Seemingly that it doesn't really seem like the Titans are like a banner of consistency for Nashville, right? Like Nashville is a city that is by and large part not even really known for its sports teams, right? Like again, the Titans are there. There is no baseball team down there. And to expect a city that is by and large part a city there for its country music to now try and hold another team that needs to have its stadium somewhat filled for 41 events doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. What this seems like to me is that this is unfortunately a money grab, and they want to essentially have an arena, and that arena can have whatever it is in it, right? And that, unfortunately, to me, would be essentially what they would turn the Nashville Grizzlies or whatever they want to rename the team into Nashville, right? They already have a hockey team with the Predators, who have also been pretty decent. I can't speak to how they're good or they are now, but there's sometimes where a city doesn't need all that, but because of capitalism, there is a desire or a true like belief that this is something that they need to have. And I don't necessarily think LeBron was coming at this from a social point in terms of what this actually means for the city of Memphis. LeBron James is coming from the school of Jay-Z in the sense that he is a capitalist. And like I said before, he wants to own an NBA team. Now, I do not know if this is going to be the team that he will own, but there very much seems to be something in the air of the idea of Nashville getting a team. And there's no way that they're going to give Tennessee two different teams. That doesn't make any sense. So what it would mean to rip away the team from Memphis, I think would be frankly disgusting. Now, if you want to argue that Memphis was already a team ripped away from another city in Vancouver, sure. Doesn't really seem that Vancouver has missed the Memphis team, has missed the Grizzlies very much. Hence why they are called the Grizzlies, because there are no grizzly bears in Memphis, Tennessee. It is a shocking reminder of how fast something can become a wildfire when you insert the elements of just race into the mix, and how this became almost a very shocking kind of development just over time with LeBron's comments. And we will see what will happen going forward, because there's too many people kind of whispering about this for me to think that this is just going to essentially not happen. And with the NBA very aggressively telling you that they will be doing expansion in the next couple of seasons, and also the fact that they are going to have a team relocated to the Eastern Conference, as it seems that right now it appears that Vegas and Seattle are the two teams that are most likely to get a team. It's not the hardest thing to put the couple things together to think that Memphis might be the team that's definitely moving to the Eastern Conference, but might also have to physically move over to Nashville as well. Speaking of race, boom, boom, boom. The NCAA Women's College Championship is over. Shout out to the UCLA Bruins for winning their first NCAA championship on the women's side. They defeated South Carolina the other day, and who ended up knocking off UConn and ended their perfect streak. But the reason why we are talking about this, unfortunately, is not because of what happened on the court, but it happened right before the game ended. If you guys didn't see, Dawn Staley, head coach of the South Carolina Gamecocks, was somewhat maybe accosted by Geno Auriemma, who is the head coach of the UConn Huskies. Before we get into this, and there will be obviously some ripping of Geno Auriemma. So close to calling him Geno Smith. Geno Auriemma is, I think that there has to be almost like levels to the amount of ripping that seems to happen. I do not think someone in Geno Auriemma, who has been one of the leading voices of the college basketball for women and the WNBA, is a 2-time gold medal winner in the Olympics, has only pretty much coached women professionally, hates women. Like, I don't think that we can go that far with the man. Has not only been around women, been around black women, been around gay women. I do not think that he has a level of misogyny inside of him that speaks to how much he has a deep desire to hate women. Could be me, but it seems like that's not what's happening. But Geno Auriemma can be an asshole. And that's essentially what it seems to came down here, is that he got into his feelings and he lashed out to Dawn Staley, who, mind you, he needs to be the last guy going crazy over losing a game. Because, and I will go ahead and read you Geno Auriemma's resume as the UConn Huskies coach. He's only coached UConn his entire career. He has 1,288 wins, the most all time. He has 12 national championships. He won a national championship last year. He has been to the Final Four 28 times. He's had 6 perfect seasons, and he almost had another one this year. He has 62 conference championships, and he has the highest winning percentage in college women's basketball history at over 886. Okay? This is, if not the greatest coach in women's sports history. And he was still petty enough and acted like a child when he took that L. And mind you, his team got its ass kicked, okay? They got their ass kicked by South Carolina. And this is not his first kind of run-in with, I think, any type of... I don't necessarily think these run-ins have to do with the fact that they are women. I think he is essentially just a man in a woman's space. Therefore, any issue that comes about will just be with women. Because if people don't remember, Pat Summitt was considered one of the greatest of all times before Geno came along. And those two those two people were going back and forth a lot of times with national championships. It took a lot for them to beat Tennessee. Tennessee couldn't beat UConn. It was this whole rivalry for like the pretty early 2000s that these two programs were neck and neck every single year. Now, it seemed to obviously cool. If you don't know, Pat Summitt unfortunately passed away about 10 years ago now, back in 2016. When she had Alzheimer's disease, it seemed like their relationship obviously cooled or warmed up, however way you want to phrase it, when her diagnosis came through. But those two people did not like each other for a long period of time. And Geno had made it so that people are not going to be on his side, because unfortunately in the day and age that we are in, like I said, the takes are going to take, and people are not going to understand the nuance of who you are. And no matter what you do, it takes, well, I believe the phrase, it takes a year to build up your reputation, it takes a second to lose it. And unfortunately, he did what he did. He even issued an apology, and people obviously still weren't going to take it wrong or take it a certain type of way, because people want to hate on things when they have an opportunity to hate. And this was an opportunity for them to hate on Geno Auriemma. I don't think just because it was the fact that he did all this winning, but the fact that he is who he is and he looks the way he looks. And the main problem that I think Geno will kind of run into is that this is now unfortunately going to follow him for a while, right? For the people who don't necessarily watch women's college basketball and probably just check in right around the time we get to the tournament time, this will probably go away. But they're obviously going to play South Carolina again at some point next season, whether it's in the regular season or in the tournament games, right? These two teams are two of the best teams in the country. There's no reason to think that they won't be two of the best teams in the country next season, right? And seeing how they're going to deal with this is going to be very interesting, because I do not know these two coaches like each other, right? And frankly, I think liking someone that's in your field is extremely overrated, right? You're paid to get wins. You're not paid to make friends. And having this kind of tension now between these two will be something to monitor as we kind of see the rest of how this goes forward. And it's funny because neither of these teams won the championship, right? That was UCLA. But that's how these things end up getting passed along and working out. Okay, sliding on over to the trade that we mentioned. Angel Reese is getting sent to the Atlanta Dream in, I would argue a pretty blockbuster trade. Angel Reese is getting sent over to the Dream for 2 first-round picks, a draft pick this year and a draft pick next season. For those of you who don't watch WNBA, it's fine. The Atlanta Dream actually had somewhat of a surprising season last year. They had the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. They were 30-14 going into the year, or at the start of the playoffs. They unfortunately got clipped off by a Caitlin Clark-less Indiana Fever team last season, but not to mention how great of the season that they had going 30-14. And I think that this is a pretty interesting inflection point, I would say, for Angel Reese's team, right? I was talking to a buddy, and I was kind of saying my points, because a lot of times when I do these pods, frankly, a lot of the things that I say here, I try to put in group chats to kind of get like a test of like what I'm saying, and then I get the feedback to try to like either take something with it and kind of run with it, or be like, all right, I'm changing my thoughts on this. And one of his points was saying that, I had a couple of friends say like, she wasn't meant to be like one of the like lead the team and all those other things, and kind of in a sense in the same way of like the Sky organization has been kind of dysfunctional for a couple of years. My overall point to that has just been, you can only be so dysfunctional if you just won a championship a couple of years ago. Obviously Reese was not on the team when that happened, but they won a championship this decade, and it's the same people who own the group, right? I'm looking at it here. The group is led by Michael Alter. He's had the team since 2006. Dwayne Wade is also a part of this ownership group. He got the team back in 2003, or he got ownership group back in 2003. This does not seem like an organization that is kind of like very dysfunctional. And I would say that last season was extremely dysfunctional for them, since that their coach got fired. I think Reese said some comments that I think she would probably want back, as to talking about her teammates, and her teammates coming back out and saying that they weren't necessarily a fan of what she was saying. And so I think that the Sky got rid of her because I think that her teammates very clearly did not like her. And I am fascinated to see how this goes, because unfortunately, I think a lot of people look at Angel Reese as a controversial figure in 2 different ways, as to why is everyone hating on this beautiful Black woman who is a national champion, who is a 2-time All-Star, who's on Team USA, who has all these accomplishments, and then another group of people being like, she is not that good, she talks a lot, is she really cares about basketball, right? And unfortunately racist, right? There's always part of that with the racist. When I talk about any athlete, and I had this conversation, I went to a conference in Toronto, talk about podcasting and how to make it better, how to do it better. One of my main questions, it was a panel of women who was up there, and they were talking about podcasting and things like that. And my question really was, well, because of the WNBA and how much it has grown, and how it is essentially, I believe, going to be one of the mainstays going to the future in terms of sports in this country, how is it that we speak about the athletes who are in this sport in a way that is accurate, but also honest and respectful of them? And they gave different answers, and I won't necessarily share everything that they said to me, but I vehemently have somewhat of a, not quagmire, maybe somewhat of a concern when I talk about the WNBA in the sense of talking about their players, because we simply do not accept, I would say, the same level of criticisms of male athletes that we do for female athletes, right? There is essentially a no holds barred feel when it comes to definitely NBA players. NFL players, like male athletes, tend to kind of get it how they get it. Now, to be fair, most of that is probably coming from other men, so maybe there's just like an inherent understanding of it. Versus with women athletes, there is essentially almost like a protective nature that seems to come when we're talking about female athletes, especially WNBA players, especially some of the Black WNBA players. Now, on this pod, I'm going to be as honest and truthful every single time I speak to everyone on here. I do think that Angel Reese's overall game is not as good as what is perceived to be. And yet, she is considered someone who is considered one of the best players in the league, and I simply do not feel that way. Basketball, once again, is a sport where, while I do not believe that it is a fair expectation to have someone be, the best player on the team, you got to get us to the championship, you got to win multiple playoff rounds. But currently, teams make the playoffs out of 12. We're going to obviously have 14 this season. I would hope that if you are considered one of the best players in the league, that you can be the 8th seed. I don't think that's too much to ask for someone in their second year, right? I think that working on your game is a very important part of it. I don't necessarily think you have to be a three-point shooter. I don't think you should be shooting 18% from three, correct? Now, to be fair to her overall field goal percentage shot up this season, right? In her rookie year in 2024, she shot 39% from the field, which is awful, especially since you are essentially just the Moses Malone of the WNBA, and you were just essentially gobbling up every offensive rebound. You're missing a lot of putbacks, which also is part of the reason why I think you lead the league in rebounding, because you're getting your own misses. Don't really think that's a real effective way to win basketball games. Now, again, to her credit, she bumped it up to 45%, well, a little under 46% this season, which around the rim is still probably not that good, especially as someone who is a big man. I'm using that term because that is the only term that I have as far as a basketball player. I don't want to say big woman, but you guys don't, you guys are picking up what I'm putting down. And it is something that I think is going to be a real challenge for her to get better at, because ultimately she has to become a better offensive player to warrant the type of admiration and type of stardom that she already has. And the biggest thing that I have that I think sometimes is, frankly, I think is patronizing to women, is the fact that it seems as if that this trade was essentially looked at more as for doing work for Angel Reese's brand versus helping the Dream win a WNBA championship. The WNBA is still in an interesting place where the players can still make more money off the court than what their on-court contracts makes, right? It's already been reported Caitlin Clark makes way more money off the court than she does on the court, right? Now, they basically aren't making, minimum wage virtually in America, like, to get by. So this will hopefully increase at some point. But Angel Reese, I would assume, is the same way. Like, I don't know exactly how much money she earns or what her net rating is, her actual overall wealth is, but she clearly makes more than what she's still on. She's still on her rookie contract. And having her say comments such as, like, I don't really need the WNBA, well, it's factual, right? I don't necessarily think that is the best if you want to try and be one of the best players that you can be. And her going to the Dream, while yes, I think there's a lot of marketing that will go behind her going to Atlanta and being in that type of city, the Dream want to win, right? And they aren't necessarily trying to get Angel Reese the brand. They want to get Angel Reese the player. And they very much seem to be doubling down on the strength that they had this season. If you look at the reasons why the Dreams made the move, like we said before, Angel Reese is one of the best rebounds, if not the best rebound in the WNBA. The Dream were second in rebounding last season, right? They had significant amount of people lead their teams in rebounding, right? They led the league in rebounding last season, like I said before. They had the highest rebound percentage of last year. They were third in offensive rebounds. They were first in defensive rebounds. This very much kind of just seems like strength upon strength upon strength. And having more possessions than your opponent is just a very good way to win games. If you limit your opponent to one shot and you get multiple more shots at the rim, chances are you're going to win the game. And so I am going to be fascinated to see how this goes for Angel Reese this season. This cannot be put on her being on a bad team. Again, this team was the number 1 seed going into the Eastern Conference playoffs last season. It seems as if it's going to be a great city for her, as well as people just mentioned before with the brand, or I just mentioned before with the brand deals. And I really want to see if she's going to become the player that I think a lot of her fans feel that she is already. I have some questions about whether that actually happened, but I think this overall situation can be a blessing in disguise for her and help propel her to have her game match the name that she has overall. So that's what we have for Angel Reese. The last little bit that we have that we want to kind of touch on, still talking with college basketball, is the fact that Mike Malone is now going to become the UNC head coach. This broke again. It's around the same time the Angel Reese story broke. Mike Malone, former coach of the Denver Nuggets, he, I believe, is almost getting hired the same week or around the same time he got fired last year when he was coaching the Denver Nuggets. And I think someone like Mike Malone taking this kind of job, I think, is full and well the nail in the coffin of any belief that college sports is any type of amateurism, okay? Mike Malone does not strike me as a guy who wants to go out there and start recruiting people, okay? He very much has been a lifelong NBA coach. He's pretty much only coached in the NBA his entire life. And he's a son of a coach who coached in the NBA. And to me, seems like a guy who is just about basketball. And college basketball has now gone so far into the pros in which they're not even pretending that the coach is building out the roster, right? I'm pretty sure, from what I can understand, that UNC did have a general manager last season to build out the team. I'm shocked that they didn't wait for Billy Donovan because the Bulls are very much clearing house, and Billy Donovan is about to get fired in a week. I think anyone would have thought that Billy Donovan was going to take that job. I thought Billy Donovan was going to take that job. But UNC clearly believes that the way to win now in college is to simply have a head coach, not a leader of men, not a voice in the locker room, not someone that you want to send your boys to help turn into young men. They just wanted a coach. And Mike Malone's a very good coach, okay? Won an NBA championship, helped develop Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray, is a really, really good basketball coach. But he has no type of gravitas, connection, euphoria for college coaching. He is a coach, and UNC got themselves a coach. Will that be good enough to get them to where they want to get to? It doesn't look great with Bill Belichick right now. But we'll see how this goes with Mike Malone, who, again, like I said, is a very good coach. All right, everyone. Thank you guys again for listening to the Men Who Cry podcast. Again, please like, subscribe, review, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend. And we'll be back here to talk with you guys again later on this week.